Greetings, dear friends, to all our esteemed English-speaking audience. My name is Vasil Pekno. I'm a Ukrainian journalist, and I invite all of you to join and watch this video of battlefield map review of Russian-Ukrainian war, full-scale Russian invasion. And I propose you to understand what is going on, ongoing situation as of June the 18th. Please join with your likes, share this video, comment below it, and also subscribe to our YouTube channel. Let me start with the statement that the situation on the battlefield is going harder and harder and harder. Our enemy, Russian Federation, they are opening more and more directions where they pushing hard. So I will make an overview over all Ukrainian, the main directions on the battlefield line today. So it will be detailed on maybe most harder regions. So let's start. Let's start with Pokrovsk district. This is maybe one of the really, not maybe, this is really one of the harder direction where enemy push and push harder and harder from day to day.
Let's start with an overview of what's happening today. There's a lot going on across all fronts, but I'll go over each one specifically, or at least most of them, because it makes sense to update the information on some locations. Since the enemy's pressure on our positions is increasing, the enemy is trying to push through along the entire line of contact across the whole front line. However, thanks to our fighters, we are managing to hold back this onslaught. Let's start with the Pokrovsk direction. What is happening here? Because this is honestly the hottest, most hellish direction where the enemy is applying pressure. Specifically in the Mirnograd direction itself, this is the northern area of Pokrovsk, right in this zone. Let me put it this way, there is a certain reinforcement. It's not something from yesterday or the day before, but over the past few weeks, there has been a reinforcement of our positions there in terms of units that are truly capable of strengthening this area. And that is precisely why we can now talk about a relative, but let's say stabilization of this agglomeration. Overall, the situation along the entire Pokrovsk direction is quite difficult, considering that the enemy has now concentrated its elite units here, primarily drone units, drone detachments, similar to the ones we have. By the way, just yesterday, it seems, yes, a new ranking of the best units within the defense forces was released. In fact, you can even take a look at it yourself. Let me add this photo to our review so we can see which units are the most powerful and capable in our current drone realities. So at the top are Magyar's Birds in first place, the Alpha Special Operations Center of the Security Service of Ukraine, the 3rd Assault Brigade in 3rd place, and in 4th place is the Lazar Group. This is a unit of the National Guard of Ukraine. You can find many of their videos online, but you wouldn't know that's the Lazar Group striking. That's why essentially they don't even have their own symbol as such. But this is a legendary unit within the defense forces. Phoenix, the 59th Assault Brigade. By the way, it's very interesting that the 72nd Mechanized Brigade, the Bulava unit, the 72nd, the Black Zaporozhians are present here. For me, this was a very pleasant and unexpected discovery. Nemesis, the Azov Unman Systems Regiment, and the 93rd Mechanized Brigade. By the way, over the past 6 months, the 93rd has proven its effectiveness in the Kramatorsk direction by plus 700%. And this is also very impressive work by the brigade, which goes by the code name Kolodny Yar. So these are precisely our frontline units, but the enemy, this is the problem with drone warfare, which I discussed in great detail in yesterday's review. The enemy also has enhanced drone capabilities and separate drone units that are considered elite. In particular, among these is a certain Rubicon Center, which operates specifically with drones, including drones using fiber optics. And they are extremely active in the Pokrovsk area and even in the South Pokrovsk, or rather the Novopavlivka direction, if we're talking about the so-called Mezhyryshya on the Novopavlivka axis, that is the area between two rivers, where the enemy actually has these two salients advancing in the area of Komayata, Zaporizhia, the village of Zaporizhia, not the regional center of Zaporizhia, but the village of Zaporizhia. So here it is precisely the Rubicon units that are operating. As reported, this is the enemy's advanced UAV unit, which targets our camouflaged equipment with night drones. Overall, in the Novopavlivka direction, the occupiers' ambitions to push beyond the borders of Donetsk region into Dnipropetrovsk region continue. So far, however, they have not achieved any success. We still maintain control in Donetsk region, even though the village of Zaporizhia as such has in fact already been occupied by the enemy. And Zaporizhia, strange as it may sound, is actually the border between Donetsk and Dnipropetrovsk regions in this Novopavlivka direction, in the interfluve of the rivers that flow here. One of them is the Vovka River, and the other, to be honest, I've forgotten the name. Let's return again to Pokrovsk. It's the same story here. The enemy's elite UAV units have been gathered, and for now, they are being held back in the direction of Menorad. As I said, they are being stopped due to the reinforcement of our units. They are being held back in the direction of Lisivka and Dakhinske. Here, in fact, the front lines have remained unchanged for quite a long time. Shevchenko, Zvirove, Pischane. This is the area where the enemy has been present south of Pokrovsk for a very long time. Here too, there are no significant changes, but there is a particular nuance here. From this area, the enemy operates drones targeting the city of Pokrovsk itself. Unfortunately, this creates serious problems for the defenders of Pokrovsk and for the city itself, with all its still intact civilian infrastructure. But overall, further south, for example, if you're talking about the areas of Novomykolaivka, Serivka, Kotyarivka, and another location near the borders of the Dnipropetrovsk region here as well, the enemy has not achieved any significant successes so far. And this cannot be described as some kind of stabilization of the front line, like what we are currently observing in the Pokrovsk direction. No, it's not so much stabilization as it is maneuvering, playing with reserve, an attempt to stop the enemy and create as many problems for them as possible. We will definitely have losses in these locations. There will also be further advances by the enemy. In fact, the Novopavlivka direction is exactly about that, about the enemy's advances. But overall, wherever there is an opportunity to stop them, wherever the conditions have been created for this, that's where they are being stopped. If certain lines are breached where the conditions are no longer favorable for such containment, the enemy is held and stopped at the next lines in order to once again drive them into a bloody trap to destroy them. This essentially is now the main task of the defense forces in the Pokrovsk area, the most intense direction of combat operations. Yesterday, north of Pokrovsk, in the direction of Kostyantynivka, rather peculiar events for the modern battlefield took place. The Russians carried out mechanized assaults. Here you can see them in the photo, in the video, how the Russians, in an unusual way for the current situation, tried to carry out this breakthrough. By the way, Westerners and analysts are sitting there speculating and wondering why the Russians have recently stopped attempting breakthroughs using vehicles. Is it that they are unable to carry them out, or are they gathering their equipment for some further upcoming future attempts to break through the front? So let me say it out loud. Most likely it's because, well, at the moment, vehicles simply can't move on the front lines at all, since they face a fate that I would call extremely hellish and flammable, just like what happened to this mechanized assault, which reportedly involved 15 pieces of heavy equipment. That is, these are tanks, armored vehicles, 5 to 8 units of motorized equipment, and a lot of already dead manpower. This was the kind of unusual assault the Russians carried out yesterday in the Kostyantynivka direction. But, well, as they say, they ended up with nothing to show for it. Because remote mining, drones, detection, reconnaissance, artillery in general, all of this, both on one side and the other, now makes it possible to neutralize the threats of such assaults. As you can see, practically on a single line, which most likely was simply mined, it was on this very line that all this enemy equipment, which was advancing in the assault, was destroyed. It's as if they lined it up with a ruler there and in fact destroyed it all on a single line at a single position. In addition, in the Kostyantynivka direction, since yesterday, we also have some interesting videos from our soldiers of the 5th Assault Brigade who, in the Chasivya direction, deep into the territory held by the enemy, cleared out the famous pipe. The pipe of the canal, the water canal, which connects the Siversky Donets River with Donetsk, used to connect them and supply Donetsk with drinking water. Then this canal partially entered such a pipe in Chasivya, and the Russians made very active use of this pipe, again, in the context of drone warfare, to hide there. This is a separate episode of the war that is happening to us. I would call it this, the pipe war. When the enemy tries to use all this sewage or any other drainage engineering structures, municipal engineering structures, not defensive fortifications, but municipal engineering structures to somehow advance on the ground to infiltrate our lines. And specifically in Chasiv Yar, the enemy was very actively using the pipes of the Siversky Donetsk-Donbas canal, barricading themselves there, living there, existing there in short. That's what the enemy was doing. And yesterday, the 5th Assault Brigade released a video. Their reconnaissance unit, Phoenix, shows how they are clearing out this pipe. Well, obviously, it's already riddled with holes in many places. Artillery has targeted it multiple times. Even aviation has struck the collectors of this pipe. And now the task has been set to clear it of any potential enemy fortifications that could have accumulated here. So what we see, and honestly, friends, what we're witnessing here is simply phenomenal work, truly phenomenal, because just imagine the level of finesse the drone operator must have, maneuvering the drone into the pipe, so skillfully piloting it, destroying and clearing out these fortifications, delving deep into the very depths of this pipe without losing connection to the drone, without, let's say, losing control of it, but simply methodically carrying out the task, clearing the pipe, so that the enemy can't hide behind these fortifications, behind these piles that have been stacked there. They cleared out 2 barricades, then they continued moving through this pipe to check if there were any enemy survivors left. I'll say right away there turned out to be no survivors there. At this point, I'm stopping the video because there are some enemy corpses lying in this pipe, the same one our drones walked over. But overall, this is an amazingly perfect job by the drone operators who completed the task of clearing out the pipe that the enemy was using to infiltrate, to advance to amass forces in the Chasiv Yar, or you could say probably the Kostyantynivka direction. This was happening in this location in the area of Chasiv Yar, just a bit on the eastern outskirts of Chasiv Yar. Just like in Kostyantynivka yesterday, the enemy, according to my information, tried to carry out motorcycle assaults also in the Siversk direction towards Serebryanka. In particular, there were such attempts to break into its outskirts. But here as well, it was another unit, Phoenix, if I'm not mistaken. They are among those working here from the State Border Guard Service. So they did not allow the enemy to advance further using FPV drones and airdrop munitions. They finished them off, drove out the infantry, and eliminated those who survived. These assaults did not take place. But what is being observed now in the Siversk direction is a very significant shortage of our infantry. I won't name the units, but there is a very, very serious lack of infantry. There are major problems even with operating those same drones, the same FPV drones, because right now there is no such thing as robots completely replacing people. Robots replace people in risky operations, in dangerous situations. But in order to operate robots or FPV drones, which in essence are also drones unmanned aviation, in order to control them, to maintain them, you actually need even more people. So it won't be the case that our automated component will replace people. On the contrary, even more people are actually needed at the front. How do we solve this dilemma? Honestly, I have no idea, nor does God, and I have no clue what our government plans to do about it. In Lyman, to the north, the enemy is putting tremendous pressure on the settlement of Torske. But as far as I know, the steadfast fighters of the Steel Lions, the 63rd Brigade, the 63rd Mechanized Brigade, are holding firm. The enemy has not achieved any success. In the same way, we can talk about a relatic again. This is not stabilization, but rather a pause for the enemy who is trying already on the right bank of the Zherbets River to advance toward Karpivka, also attempting to bypass through Zelena Dolina. However, recently, they have not had any visible significant successes, just as there are currently no visible significant successes in the direction of Dvorichna, where the enemy previously gained a tactical advantage by essentially creating a bridgehead on the right bank of the Oskil River. From the boundaries of this, the schematic boundaries of this bridgehead, the bridgehead with its center in the settlement of Dvorichna, and now the enemy is trying to expand from the Dvorichna area. For now, at least we can say that for now the enemy has, well, our units have managed to maintain a more or less stable front line here. And this is only possible because the enemy is not moving equipment across the Oskil, meaning there are no such movements across the Oskil and no transfer of equipment. For now, I am still providing updates based on my own information. The enemy still has not established crossings here that would allow them to transfer equipment. And it's clear that without equipment, a deep advance further west here is impossible. Therefore, as long as we manage to destroy or at least prevent the construction of crossings over the Oskil, there is a relative stabilization of the front line here. But it's clear that in the long run, the enemy's objective will be to push our units further back, because the farther they are from the shore, the greater the chances that this bridgehead will actually serve its logistical purpose. Right now, it's important to understand that the village of Kindrashivka plays an extremely complex and possibly decisive role in the Kupiansk direction. By the way, let me know in the comments where the correct stress is in its name, because the battles for it could prove decisive. The enemy has broken through here, and Kindrashivka, why do I call it decisive? Because Kindrashivka is a direct route, a straight path to Kupiansk, with all the heights of this settlement and its fortified area, which gives access to the high ground, allowing for relentless mortar and drone attacks from the north of Kupiansk, and essentially provides a clear, open path to begin battles for the town of Kupiansk itself. That's why the fact that fierce battles for Kindrashivka are still ongoing is beyond doubt. I've already pronounced it 3 different ways, friends. Please write in the comments how this settlement's name is actually pronounced. So intense fighting is taking place here, but the outcome of these battles will also significantly influence the development of the situation along the entire Kupiansk direction, and specifically regarding the settlement of Kupiansk. That is precisely why such fierce fighting is taking place here. As of today, it is inappropriate to talk about the occupation of this settlement by the enemy. And now, Sumy region. I will conclude today's overview with Sumy region, because yesterday we had an analysis from the Ukrainian organization Deep State, who are actually the ones implementing this open source project with battle maps. Yesterday, the Deep State team released an overview of the Sumy fortifications, because there have been quite a few different opinions lately. Many people have talked about the fortifications. I myself have spoken about the fortifications, as far as I know from what the soldiers have told me, who said that there really are fortifications in the Sumy region. It's just that Deep State have not provided more details on this issue and are now explaining what exactly it is. Well, if this is already in the public domain and they are talking about it, then obviously I suppose I will relay this idea and share more of what I know as well from our defenders in this area. There are fortifications. This does not mean that they are right on the border. That is in this strip, which the enemy has more or less managed to occupy at the moment. There are fortifications where there aren't any at the border, and where there hasn't been active work by enemy FPV drones, and where there haven't been active artillery shellings. There are fortifications along the Kotin-Pizarivka line, Pizarivka, Kianitsia, and essentially Yunakivka. And there is also another location here towards the side of Mauritia. This too is essentially part of our fortification lines. That's why I've always said, and I still firmly believe that, and Yablunivka also belongs here as well. I hold the view that in principle, beyond that location or that particular section of territory where the enemy has already advanced, they really won't be able to go any further. The decisive factor in this context is the defense of Pizarivka, Kotin, and Yunakivka. This was the basis for my relative calm regarding the prospects on the Sumy axis. But yesterday, Deep State expanded on the situation here. They say that, in their opinion, and based on their experience communicating with soldiers, better engineering and fortification structures could have been developed along the border, as well laying out tetrahedrons, so-called dragon's teeth, and installing more mine explosive barriers and anti-tank ditches. This was not done directly on the border. I'm talking now about settlements like Basivka, Novenke, and Juravka. Primarily these places, because it was through them that the enemy entered. According to the Deep State members, this was not done here. And as a result, it did not pose any obstacle to the enemy at all. Well, it is what it is. According to my information, I mean, I understand that the enemy's presence on the border seems rather unpleasant. But overall, there is a clear understanding that essentially the enemy will not be able to advance beyond the lines of Yunakivka, Khotin, Pisarivka, Kianitsia, Mauritia, and Myropilia. Although here as well, other threats may arise, so to speak, if the enemy even approaches these lines. These are threats of Sumy being shelled by tube artillery and the use of long-range FPV drones. These threats do exist. Our soldiers are trying to counter them. And in particular, recently, from what I know, there have also been counter successes, that is, successes in terms of counterattacks by the defense forces of our state specifically. These successes, let me highlight them in blue. With blue, overs took place in Kindrativka, and successes continue to occur in Andrivka. That is, Andrivka still has not been fully liberated yet, according to my information. And Yablunivka of the Yunakivka community, there are also successes by the enemy here. In other settlements that we see on the deep state map in the red zone, the enemy is present everywhere. In Novomykolaivka, by the way, which is also in the red zone here, the enemy is present as well. Well, that's the situation as of today in the Sumy region. You can say it's catastrophic, but you can say everything is fine either. Overall, there is little good on the front, to be honest. There is a crazy, wild, almost inhuman pressure from the enemy. That's how it is. There will be losses somewhere. Yes, there will be losses somewhere. But at the minimum, the task is to withstand the terrible summer onslaught of the enemy at the front, to hold out and endure it in the rear, so that the missile and Shahed drone attacks, no matter how terroristic or difficult they may be for our civilian population, these are the challenges for the coming weeks, or rather the coming months. And after that, well, after that comes what comes next. Then comes autumn, and then there will be corresponding negotiations, or a window for negotiations, with an understanding of whether the imperial ambitions of the Russians are in principle achievable or not. That's how things stand. Thank you for your attention. Take care of yourselves, and until we meet again.